everybody? I'm here with Mr. Darryl Clement, the band director at Riverside Academy. How you doing, Mr. Clement?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, Mr. Clement, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know we had you on here last year and had a fantastic time. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just anything? Just in general?
Yeah, just in general. Like, what do you do?
I came to school at Riverside from first grade through 12th grade when it first opened. Then went to Nichols for a few years to start my degree in music education, but I finished at LSU and got a master's of instrumental music education from K through 12. Came back and taught at Riverside for 10 years, then moved to Texas. Went back to school to get a degree in theater, and then started doing some theater work in Dallas. And then when my mom got ill, I moved back to Louisiana to take care of her, and ended up back at Riverside and have been here ever since.
So, you've been here your whole life, basically. Tell us
Since
a little bit.
I've been on this campus steady from 1970 through 1982 when I graduated, and then back in 85 and through, 87 and all the way through 1998, and then off and on for the next 6 or 7 years until 2010 where I came back. And so yes, I've spent my whole life here. Pretty
much. Tell us a little bit about like what Riverside means to you, being a Riverside guy. Like,
well, I'm a very, very loyal person. So, because a lot of people, particularly in the 90s when I worked here, I was getting offers to go to bigger schools right and left. Mm-hmm. But when I was in band here as a student, we had a different band director like every 2 years, which frustrated the people in band immensely. And so I set out my goal, when you had to write your goal of what you wanted to do, mm-hmm. my goal was to come back to Riverside and to turn the band into something I never had. Right. And I've succeeded in that in the first 10 years that I was here. We started off in 1987. I had 13 band members, 13, and did halftime shows and concerts with 13 band members, and it was rough. And a lot of the kids didn't know how to read music, really didn't have a good foundation of how to play their horns. The school was very, very, very family oriented. It was a small town. Everybody knew each other. Right. And that really helped, because as they saw the band get better and better, more people wanted to become a part of it. And when I left in 1998, we had, when you include the dance team and color guard, we traveled in 3 buses. I think in the band we had about 75, 80 students. Wow. And it was a totally different thing, because about 15 of those students were top athletes of the school. So football players who didn't march, like we have a couple football players that march with us now, but like I had 15 back then. And also, we had, when I left, we had a chorus of 30 people, a class, a choir.
Really?
Yeah, and half were guys and half were girls, so like 15 guys and 15 girls.
I didn't even know y'all had a class like that.
Yeah.
So, bringing it back to...
I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question.
Oh.
It's very dear to my heart, and I'm going to speak candidly, because sometimes my heart gets broken. Right. Because I want Riverside, because it's been my life, I want Riverside to be the best school anywhere. Like, I think that's what our goals should be. And when I see sometimes us falling short with that, when students don't want to do work, or when you hear teachers that are frustrated because it's harder to do what they want to do, it breaks my heart, because I think we should all want Riverside to be the best it can be. I don't want us to look down the street at other schools going, well, they got it going on over there. Right. We need to have it going on over here, and we should all be proud to be a part of this school. It's a privilege to be at this school.
Do you feel like as if it's growing more towards that in the past 4 years?
I feel like in some ways we have improved some things. I think I'm gonna be honest, bringing Coach Lee to the table really I think that has done a lot. I'm really appreciative that there is a person that is the athletic director and the head football coach who I can talk to, who we can come together like we did when the football team came into the band hall and we all learned to do the fight song together.
Yep.
I think those things help our school to be the school that it should be. I think sometimes we lose our way a little bit because we sometimes work like each group and organization is proud of their organization. But what I would like to see is us all to be proud to be a rebel, just because we're here and we support the other groups because, and I say this all the time, and this is what often maybe, like I said, breaks my heart, is, you know, when I'm in the stands for football games, I'm not a big sports fanatic, but I am cheering for our team because that's my team on the field.
Right.
That's not just another team. That's my team.
Right.
And I would want, like, for people that come to see band concerts and to go to the plays, and when they go to basketball games or softball games, you go because that's your team, because they're representing you. We're all in this together, and it doesn't always feel that way.
Right. I feel as myself, over these past 2 years, I've grown a completely different respect for theater and for the band, because I've hung out with more people these past 2 years, and it's just like a different realm. Like, whenever I first started doing the play with you, man, I was sweating like a dog. I never would have thought that just dancing like that would be so demanding physically. But it has helped me. It's helped me in sports because the footwork of it helps me a lot. And I vouch for it.
A lot of athletes, professional athletes, take dance or some sort of type of dance because, like you say, footwork, but it's balance, it's core. Like, you dance from your core. And so it strengthens that, and it gets you to move faster because you got to keep up with the beat. So particularly some of the more aggressive dances, particularly what we're doing in Zombie Prom, you got to be able to move. Right. And you know, it's aerobic. It keeps you in shape. So I think a lot of athletes could benefit from that. You're right.
I 100% think so, and I vouch for it, the play. I want everybody to do the play, all the athletes. So back to what the play is this year, Zombie Prom. Do you feel as if it's going to be as successful as Joseph was last year?
I'm hoping that. It's a totally different show, so it's hard to tell. You couldn't probably get more opposite in terms of shows from Joseph telling this biblical story,
right,
and with a lot of different styles of music, to doing, and this is, you know, was written by one of Broadway's celebrated composers, to doing a show that was only done off Broadway, that's very quirky, 1950s, and more modern sounding probably than a lot of shows we do. And it's got a really unusual story. Whereas I feel like, even though the story of Joseph is unusual in itself, that he interprets dreams and you know, there's like a magical kind of thing there. The fact that we're telling a story about a person who comes back to as life. A zombie, and is treated like almost normal, like it happens every day, but it makes it a great deal of fun.
Right. So let's talk about Joseph. We did a podcast last year before Joseph. Tell me about it, like how the performance was.
So the Joseph is probably going to go down as one of the best things we've done at Riverside. And as I was telling the RA Ovations at practice the other night, RA Ovations has been at the forefront of producing like very new things that no one in the community has touched. So we were the first school in the river parishes to do, or at least in St. John Parish, and I think maybe even the river parishes, to do Beauty and the Beast. We were the first to do Little Mermaid. Even before community theaters did it, we were the first to do Freaky Friday, the first to do Big Fish. So bringing a lot of shows to our school and our community that hadn't been done before. And Joseph had been done a lot, but the biggest compliment I get, and why I think it's such a success, is I've had friends who don't like Joseph, who don't like the show,
Right.
just for whatever reason, came to see our show and walked away going, that was really good. And I think that we worked probably harder than we worked for any show on that show.
100%.
And in the end, it paid off because what we presented was not a typical high school show.
Correct.
It was entertaining, it was fast paced, everybody was bought in, the dancing was great. And so I think that, it's a tough one to follow. And I think that's why it was important to do something very different. Because the people that probably enjoyed Joseph might like this a whole lot better because it's a lot more, it's funnier and it's campier and it's just different. And then some people, it might not be their taste. It's got a good message. The Zombie Prom has a good message because it's about, not being afraid of something just because it's different. And do we accept people, for who they truly are, or do we shun them because somebody tells us that we should? So it's really interesting, but it's got fun music and it's got a lot of fun, over the top kind of acting.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the character list this year. How was that choosing that? Like, what are some factors?
This year was really, it was interesting and it was difficult because we're in the last few years, I found myself in a situation that no drama teacher finds himself in a high school usually. Typically, you have a lot more girls who are singers and dancers and actors than boys. And in the last few years, for us, it's been just the opposite. Last year I chose Joseph because we didn't have a lot of girls that were comfortable singing by themselves. So Joseph was perfect because it has 12 brothers and one female narrator. And that's basically all you typically, and then Mrs. Potiphar. So if you have a couple of girls willing to put themselves out there, then you can do the rest with as long as you have strong boys in the leads. This year, I basically said, if we're going to do a show, there's not a lot of shows like Joseph where you have males are dominating everything, but yet there's still a chorus and this has female leads in it.
Right.
So I was like, okay, the girls have to step up or we got to do a non-musical.
Right.
And the girls stepped up as well as the guys, but I expected that. So I had a lot of girls that have never tried out and boys that have never tried out for lead roles that came and tried out and brought it. So I was fortunate. It was tough, but because you can't get past when you're auditioning for something, particularly in a high school, you can't ignore what you know from the past. So when people do work for you in the past and you hear them sing and dance and do whatever, that still kind of stays on your mind. You know what they're capable of and you know what you have to build on. But for some people, if it's their first time out, you have to put a lot of trust that what I'm hearing during this audition is what they're going to bring every day during rehearsal. And so far, so good.
Really? So, going back to your life, what did you do in Dallas more? Expound on that.
Okay, so when I moved to Texas, I first started off. I went back to band directing, and I did that for 2 years at a Kaufman Middle School. I was the head band director at Kaufman Middle School. And then as a part of that job, I was the assistant band director of the high school because the campuses were side by side. So we kind of team taught at both campuses. I did that for 2 years and then just decided when I left Riverside, I really needed a break. And I thought when I went to Kaufman that I would get that break because when I left Riverside in 1998, I was the band director, the Southern Sweetheart sponsor, the Color Guard sponsor, the Student Council sponsor, the chairman of the Carnival Ball. There were several other things.
Right.
I was just doing a lot. and just got way burned out because I didn't say no to anybody for anything. And so I ended up just kind of getting burned out and got the opportunity to move to Dallas. And so I did, but then I needed a job. So the easy thing was just to go back into band directing, and I thought, well, if I'm just doing band, it won't be so bad. But in Texas, just doing band is a lot because it's heavy into competition, and there's more students involved, there's more work involved, there's more everything involved. So I had decided I wanted to become I wanted to do parties. Like, so I loved what I did. I loved what I did with Carnival Ball, like coming up with a theme and making the decorations and organizing the script and all of that. I love that. So I talked to somebody who was a party planner, and their degree was in theater, in set design. So I thought, well, that makes sense. So I decided to go back to school for theater to get into set design. And so two things happened out of that. While I was finishing up my degree in theater and set design, I got offered a job to do a set for a company called Theater Britain, which led me to be their resident set designer for about 10 years, I guess. And so I designed every set. They did about 3 or 4 shows a year, and I designed every set for them during that time. That doesn't necessarily pay all the bills, but I was very fortunate through a friend to get a job working for a multi-millionaire, basically doing their parties and their decorations for their holidays. So, so for about, I guess, 3 or 4 years, it was surreal. But because the house looked if you've ever seen like the old Batman movie and you see his house, this is what the house looked like.
Wow.
And there was a gate code you got in, and I had my own gate code. And so it started off because my friend who was he was in charge of the landscaping, they wanted him to do like the Halloween party decorations because they had a little neighborhood Halloween party. And he's like, that's not really my thing, but I have a friend who would be really good at this. So I went and did like the Halloween decorations, and that's my thing. So they liked it, and so the lady who owned the house said, look, for Christmas, we do a party for my husband's company, and it's like a 2-hour cocktail party, but I like to do a theme and all of that. What would you suggest? And I said, well, I've never done this before, so I'm a little intimidated, but I would do something I know. So I would probably make it a New Orleans themed Christmas. And she said, okay, explain that to me. What would we call it? And I said, well, you can call it anything, but we could do something like Jingle Bell Jazz. She said, oh, I like that. Let's do it. What? I want you to plan this party. And I'd never done that before. And so I worked with my friends who who was doing the landscaping, and I just let him guide me. And so we did typical decorations in the house. Their decorations were always the same, but for these parties, I came back to Louisiana and bought red beads with crawfish hanging from them and green beads with alligators hanging from them, and threw that in all the garlands that were hanging around the house. And then so the hardest thing that for me to learn was to spend other people's money and not to worry about how much I'm spending. Because like for them, $100 is like me spending $10.
Right.
So I hired juggler. They had valet parking in their like circular driveway, and so I had jugglers that were juggling over the cars as the valets were going as the people were going through. we had like the street entertainers of New Orleans. I had people doing balloon animals, and then we had in the great room living statues like you see in New Orleans. I hired them, and then on the balcony of the great room, we had a Dixieland jazz band playing for 2 hours.
Wow.
And then she called me one day and she said, "Hey, look, what are we gonna serve for food?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's New Orleans, so like Louisiana, you got a wealth of stuff." She said, "Just name me some stuff," and I named everything I could think of: red beans and rice gumbo, crawfish etouffee, crawfish pies, po' boys, fried shrimp, mini muffaladas,
Beignets.
Bananas Foster, all kind of stuff. Everything I can think, jambalaya. Everything was served at the party.
Wow.
She had, so they hire a caterer and they tell the caterer, like when you have money, you just tell them what you want. And she said, this is what we want. And they did everything in miniature form. So they had like little bitty, like po' boy sliders, and they had crawfish etouffee, and they had bananas Foster, and they had everything, and it was all good. I don't know who they got to do this, but it was very good. And that party was such a use. She said, typically the party is from 8 to 10. She said at midnight we were kicking people out. Oh, we also served hurricanes and, you know, and New Orleans type cocktails. And so, but she said at midnight we're kicking people out. And she said no one's ever stayed that long. She said it was such a success, and that led me to work for them for the next 4 years. And doing their Christmas decorations in front of their house, which every tree was lit, which was stunning, because the property, like this is a property that had, you know, their main house, a tennis court, a garage with an apartment for the chauffeur on top, a guest house that was separate from the house, but it was a full house for when people came to visit. A swimming pool, 2 saunas, a putting green, a sand volleyball court, a greenhouse, a party pavilion with a restaurant kitchen underneath. This was a massive property.
Right.
And so we did all the trees in, like the trunks were in colored lights, and then the canopies were all done in white. And then I contracted out someone to build 3 giant Jack-in-the-Boxes. One with Santa Claus's head, one with a reindeer head, and one with a snowman head, and they moved. And when I finished with all that we added every year, and at the end of it, there was like $100,000 worth of decorations in the front yard, and everything moved. It looked like you were passing in front of Disney World. And they had the police had to like go every night to direct traffic past the house because it would cause such a traffic jam. And I was like, a little boy from reserve was responsible for that. And then my mom got ill, the economy kind of tanked. And so they stopped having all the big elaborate parties, and I came back to Louisiana.
God, I wish I was invited to
That
one
was
of these
Texas.
parties. Everything's bigger in Texas from what I heard.
Well, they certainly have a lot of wealth, and they know how to spend it.
Right. So is there anything else you want to tell to anybody that's listening?
No, I think we covered a lot. I talked a lot.
All right. Thank you for being on, Mr. Clement.
No problem.